Hi, I'm Andrew Coltrin. This is my presentation for the festival. It's called Thought Balloons, as illustrated by my friend Booger Bear thinking a thought balloon that says thought balloons. Like I said, Andrew Coltrin, also known as Partly Robot. I put that name on some things because I thought it was a funny name. It's also my Twitter handle, and I have a website, partlyrobot.com. If you are curious about anything else I'm up to, I periodically put stuff up there. Anyway, moving on to our next thing. Let me share the next title screen. Let me make this big. I know. If I were more clever, I would edit all this. But anyway, my subtitle for this talk is How I Learned to Make My Own Improvised AAC Devices Before I Even Knew I Was Autistic. So before I get down any rabbit holes, let's do some vocabulary. An AAC device, that's an augmentative and alternative communication device. This is kind of a term that's used in the special ed field in the United States, probably in the UK too, why not? But we do say things differently across oceans, so I don't want to assume anything. But an AAC device, simply, it's just any device that helps scaffold communication for someone who has trouble using their vocal speech reliably. So there's just a million, well, maybe not a million, but many different types. A common one I've seen is basically a tablet computer that has separate icons on it that somebody can touch and search through menus, and they can select what they want to say through that. There's also picture exchange systems with using little cards and Velcro. There's also that neat setup Stephen Hawking had. All of those are augmentative and alternative communication devices. There's a lot of alternatives, and one of the simplest alternatives, me picking up my sketch pad and drawing on it, that is an alternative communication device, which ties into my next definition point, comics. So that's a medium of written communication that integrates pictures and words. Basically, I've always known I was a visual thinker, often got caught up and tongue-tied trying to put together my thoughts into these word sentences. But drawing things has always been, a great way for me to augment what I'm trying to communicate. So I naturally was drawn to comic books as a kid. One of the neat things about comic books is the thought balloon. And I've got that another thought balloon illustration here because that was fun. Just basically a bubble that hangs out over a character's head that indicates what they're thinking, which I think is a very neat device because in real life, I often struggle to figure out what other people are thinking. So when I discovered that thought balloons were a thing in comics, well, I was very interested in that. It helped model some things for me. Oops. And the last one here is zine. So this is the little publications that I make with a photocopier, and I've traded them around, but it's originally zine was just a shortened form of fanzine, which itself was a shortened form of fan magazine. Basically self-published little booklets by people just wanted to express what they're passionate about. They're often devoted to the author's special interests or their personal life experiences. Marginalized voices really found a welcoming community in the zine world. I mean, really anybody can make a zine. Anybody who feels like they are not heard or not understood can take advantage of the medium and use it to try to help themselves be more understood, which is, basically my terms right there. Here's my outline. It's a real mess because I just can't think this talk through in a straightforward manner. I did some scribbling. I figured out that I realized I was weird in 1984. Didn't get my diagnosis till 2012. Had a lot of trouble in the early 90s figuring things out. there was no Asperger's diagnosis then. So there was no like understanding that, hey, autism might apply to somebody like me, who's very smart and yet can't figure out how to talk to people. So that was, that's this mess. I don't think I need to share that anymore. Let's go back to here. And is my camera blurry? I don't care. Anyway, this here is my zine A is for Asperger's, which I made about 4 years ago, which for me, it was made as an attempt to explain some things that I was beginning to understand about autism. And I used this tool that I had taught myself back in the early 90s, back when comic book nerds were not rich and famous, you know. Yes, the Marvel Cinematic Universe was only a thing we could dream of back then. Back then, comic book nerds were legitimate nerds. One of the comic books I really liked when I was younger was Howard the Duck. And if you see the tagline on the top, they're trapped in a world he never made. So Howard the Duck, if you can ignore the movie, that was not terribly good. You can look at this guy who it just doesn't belong in this world. And he's trying to figure it out. He has no choice but to put up with the people around him and try to figure out how to connect to them and how to improve his situation. So naturally, I was drawn to this stuff. And I really liked, well, I just really liked Howard the Duck. I really liked a lot of comic books. And a lot of comic books had those similar kind of themes in them about, you know, outsiders and people who are misunderstood. So as I, you know, dived into comic books, other comic book nerds accepted me as one of their own. And, you know, that was one of my early experiences trading comic books with friends. Say, hey, read this. It's a way of giving each other a bit of vocabulary to talk to each other with and about. So later on, when I was having those troubles in college because, well, I was supposed to talk to people, and I constructed a whole life where I figured out ways to not have to talk to anybody at all in high school, for the most part, unless, you know, unless my friend. And I had a few, but didn't talk to adults, didn't talk to teachers. There was a long time where I couldn't even talk to my own dad. And I think, you know, knowing what I know now, that sounds like selective mutism, but who knows? Sometimes I have trouble speaking now, and it's just, it's not all or nothing, it's here or there. But it was very annoying in the fact that, you know, if I wanted to approach somebody not within my, you know, comfort zone, not within my already established friend network, it was very, very difficult to break the ice. I'm, you know, small talk was not my specialty. So I was making comics. I decided that, you know, whatever else I did, I could just draw some comics. I could make my own photocopy thing. This is one of my very early ones that I actually made with my good friend Luke Porter, who I met in high school in an art class. And again, this is a friendship that got its start because he was interested in what I was doing because I was drawing some weird stuff, and then he drew some weird stuff and we joked. And it was nonverbal communication that broke the ice in that relationship. And it led to us collaborating on this goofy little comic book where, you know, I took a community class about how to make these things, and I learned that yes, if you lay your pages out, you can photocopy it. And there's this thing called Fact Sheet 5, where other people have made comics and other strange publications send them in and review them. So this is back in the 90s when, the internet was for a different kind of nerd. It wasn't for the comic book nerds yet because we hadn't found it and we're busy doing other things. But zines were very close to comics. And I sort of found my way into the zine community because I saw a different kind of publication photocopied, much like comic books. And I saw that on the inside, you could combine words, you could combine pictures, you could put them any way you liked. With a strange illustration for no particular reason, just because you like it. Combine text and images. Bring this guy Booger Bear into it. This guy has been my my inner power animal. I don't know what you call him. I mean, I've made a lot of comics with the Booger Bear. I've been drawing him, for 25 years. Usually it becomes like it's a conversation between me and the cartoon bear, and we're working out stuff that either I think is funny or troubling or whatever. Often I will just go to my notebook and draw a dialogue with Booger Bear for issues I'm having trouble with, and I don't even show those to anybody sometimes, but sometimes I'll make a really elaborate one, like this guy I made about 8 years ago. And so in this one, me and Booger Bear are talking about going to do some pub trivia, which I'm really good at. Can't wait for that to come back. But moving on to the next thing. By making zines and by reaching out to people in the mail, I was able to make a lot of connections with people. And a lot of those connections have translated over into the social media realm. Like I have Facebook friends now that I met through trading zines that I've never met in person. It would probably be terribly awkward to meet in person because some of these people that I traded zines with also have various social anxiety. And, it's kind of par for the course. One of the people that I met through zines, I've actually met in person, Joe Beal, he's a publisher of Microcosm Publishing, which started out as him making zines. And he, similar age as me, did not get diagnosed as a kid, had troubles figuring things out, used zines as his way of connecting with people, and kind of built a business out of it. And then, about the same time I was getting, diagnosed and figuring out myself, he was also going through a similar process. And then, I reached out to him, we compared notes, and he's like, hey, why don't you make a zine about autism? And he wanted a, sort of a radical zine. I don't know if A's for Asperger's is that radical. It's what I made, 4 years ago. It's basically, this one I set up in a format of kind of like a little dictionary, little tiny glossary of terms that I learned and picked up from my reading about what was going on with me. And I made this one sort of anonymously. I was not quite ready to fully come out of the autism closet back then. I'm in a much different place now, and but this guy has been a good, very popular. Gotten a lot of feedback from people who are like, yeah, people who have autism who like read it and like, dude, I like the way you put it. I get it. I think you understand. Whereas a lot of the more, the text written by doctors or, from a clinical perspective really seems to not take into account the perspective of the people who live like we do. And, it's, gets back to that theory of mind problem. Now, that's another thing where I'm tying it into thought balloons. Because in this other zine, my friend AJ Michael from Pennsylvania, a friend that I've never met in person, but a friend that I've traded lots of zines with, was putting together this meta comics issue about 10 years ago. It's all right. Yeah, 2011. So that was back when I was starting to go like, yeah, this Asperger's stuff, this autism stuff really relates to me, but I'm not sure I agree with this theory of mind deficit idea, because I feel like I got this idea that other people have thoughts in their heads and they are not the same as my thoughts. So, you know, Simon Baron Cohen's idea was basically that, oh, people with autism don't understand that other people have different thoughts in their heads. And I was like, I just don't buy that, because I don't see that myself. And I was like, well, maybe it's because I read a bunch of comic books. So I wrote an essay called Thought Balloons with my guys in it. And it's, I don't know, my thinking's grown since then, but the idea of the thought balloons, the power of that symbol, of being able to look into somebody else's head, being able to have that crystal view of what their thought process might be, is like an important symbol to me, I think. And the zines are kind of like my own little thought balloons. Like you know, one of the things that this one gave me the power to do was to basically reveal my autism to my in-laws, because I hadn't really talked to them about it before. And it was very frightening for me. I felt very vulnerable, but because I was able to put it into a concrete publication and, you know, have my thoughts really well thought out. If I'm speaking, you know, person to person, it can be great, or I can just be meandering garbage. But this, you know, I spent some time on it, I organized it, I got it together. And all I get is positive feedback, even though myself, I'm like, oh, I need to change it. As soon as I was done with this, I was like, oh, my thoughts are changing. I'm not sure I even like all the words that are on the cover anymore. I'm not sure, you know, Asperger's is no longer a diagnostic category. It's seen by some as a divisive term. So maybe I don't want to use that term anymore. But that exists, people like it. I still share copies of it. So, but it is time to do a new thing, which I'm going to go back to my slideshow, which hopefully will help me out here. Okay, so yes, my outline is a mess. Oh, there's a bunch of the zines that I made. This is for Asperger's back in 2017. But now what I'm working on, the new thing is called A is for Ability, where really I'm trying to take a step away from that whole medical deficit definition of what is autism, what is being disabled. Like, I mean, there's stuff I can't do, but there's a lot of stuff I can do, you know, and I think that's true for a lot of people. And I don't want to, you know, gloss over certain seriously impacted individuals, because there are those and I've known them in my life. But I also think that if we discount people and label them as disabled and ignore the fact that every single human being in their lifetimes passes through periods of disability. Like, we're all infants who can't do anything at one point in our lives. And we will all be, you know, have moments where, you know, whether it's physical or psychological or, you know, disease related, or just through sheer aging, we will have points where we are not able to do all the things that we are able to do at other times. So rather than single people out for, you know, through a disability model, I'm shooting for a different perspective with A is for Ability, and trying to be more inclusive with any kind of neurodiversity. But, you know, my flavor of neurodiversity is autism, so that's what I know best. But I also been able to count among my friends people with all kinds of the alphabet soup of diagnoses. So, so, the more I'm able, to learn more about other basic setups for the human brain, the more I'm able to enjoy who I am and who they are. And I think what I want to wrap this up with is that, anything that you can do that can help you be engaged and able and active, anything that helps bridge those gulfs, like for me, the social anxiety and the communication roadblocks I had were really crippling. And I had workarounds that were crazy and exhausting. But I've learned a lot of tricks. But one of the things that really helped me was being able to make these little guys and send them out and, trade them with other people, make connections that way, and build some interpersonal skills that way, actually, that have paid off. And then you find something really cool. Like this one is a comic book all about the Dvorak keyboard layout. I mean, how you cannot get more, specialized down the rabbit hole of special interest in the Dvorak keyboard. I have not taught myself Dvorak keyboard yet, but it's been on my list for years. Anyway, that's a total random aside. The main thing is, figure out how to communicate who you are, figure out how to feel good about who you are. And if you have to create your own, AAC device, your own way of, augmenting your ability to, speak in the typical channels by, adding illustrations or adding, music or adding dance. I mean, we have the ability to do that, especially now that we've all got these little tiny computers in our pockets. I would say text messages and memes and emojis have served me so well in being able to, get the point across to people that, if I had been relying sheerly on my my verbal skills, I would be slowed down. So, use what you can. Zines are cool. And if you're interested in mine, totally take a look at my website, www.partlyrobot.com. Otherwise, thank you to the organizers of the festival. This has been an amazing opportunity.